Very good. So the orientation I like to take on this is to start with like a 10,000-foot bird's eye view of what the field services module can do for you from a dispatcher, a manager standpoint. And then from there, I'll go to the individual level where we actually create the service orders and the appointments and show what it looks like with the mobile device and as we would flow through everything. And so that's what these first couple of screens I'm going to show you are. It's that dispatcher bird's eye view perspective. So this is my field services manager dashboard, so you can get an idea of what's going on with today's appointments, the week's appointments, appointments that are ready to be scheduled, and etc. And I'm sure this has been covered in the past, but just to be redundant, you can modify these dashboards and configure them accordingly to your design, and add content. So if there's information here that's missing, certainly please add it accordingly. Over here on my right-hand side, I am looking at my tech appointment load. So this would be how we've been utilized in the past. You can see down here on the bottom where I have dates where like Eric and Jesus and Rick have been really busy, but down here on the bottom we have John and Peter who have not been busy. We need to get them some work. But this dashboard, like I said, was the field services manager. We do have a dashboard also for individual techs. If you wanted to broadcast that to them and they wanted to see their own view of the data, or their own perspective of what's going on, you can certainly publish that too. And they can mark that as their home page. You can put this out on the mobile device if you wanted to as well. From here, over on our services workspace is where most of the work happens, whether it's configuration, setup, viewing data. In particular, here is the calendar board. The calendar board is going to be that view that you might put on your 50-inch TV mounted to the wall in your office so you can see exactly what's going on across the whole organization. So let me just truncate this down a little bit and give us as much real estate as we can. I have my workday starting at 6, but I should probably change that to a little bit later in the day because this is when everybody's working. Greens are items that are not started. Blues are in process. You might see some of that already in the text of those appointments. Grays are appointments that are already completed. You get to control that color and how that looks. This is all interactive. Whenever I'm hovering over an item, you can see it turns into a finger, and there's the hyperlink where I could drill back into the details about these appointments. If I needed to, I could do some optimization manually here by dragging and dropping. So we see that here's Pam Bronner, who has very little going on. Right beside her is Neil, who has 2 overlapping appointments. I can just drag and drop. And this will change all the data in the background to go along with that, so that the appointment updated so that it's now Pam, and if it changed any time slots, that's what's being updated with that load button or load screen that just popped up. So again, drag and drop, drill back. You can change the days that you're looking at. So if you want to look out into the future or the past, change the orientation so that we're looking at a full week or a month. We've got some parameters over here so we can look at a specific branch location. Up here's another filter for looking at people with specific skill sets, license types, service areas. Or if I prefer, I can even change the orientation of my calendar so that it puts the names on the left-hand side and the times at the top. Or alternately, I can even pull up a list of the unassigned appointments so I can just drag those onto people's calendars accordingly. So this is, again, like I said, this is a grand view of everything that's going on and across the organization for the time frame that we have on the calendar board, with some interaction where we can move things around if we needed to. And then along with that, we also have staff appointments on map. And so when we're looking at this, we're going to see literally where everybody's scheduled to be today. So it's everybody you see that has appointments. Those are the people that are showing up here. Here's the routes. Everything I have is pretty much across New York City, Manhattan, areas like that. If I zoom out, get maybe a little bit better view. I can limit this down to just a few people. So I'm logged in as Maxwell Baker, and I'm curious about what Maxwell Baker has going on. And He's pretty much all in the same area right there, probably same address, multiple appointments. I can click buttons like this where I have GPS turned on my device, and I can see exactly where that device is on the map, depending on my settings. And you can see I'm located in Seattle, Washington right now. Probably need to let my boss know I'm not going to make that appointment today. If I needed to, I mentioned optimization just a moment ago, and we have a product here for optimized appointment scheduling, and this would be some literal software that would adjust people's schedule accordingly. And it would change their start times and their orientation so that we're back over here on the map. If I choose somebody, Jesus is typically busy and he's kind of all over the place. 1, 2, 3 at the top, then 4, 5. It may have made more sense to swap 5 and 4. That's what that software would do, is go out and look at their route and just make an adjustment so that instead of them being all over the place, that it optimizes their route. And again, that's optimized appointment scheduling. I mentioned, so after doing the device on the map, we do track location history if you have that turned on. And if I come down here to my bottom, location tracking history, it depends on the intervals and the timing and stuff like that, exactly when it's kicked in to start. And so here's an example. My system was reset over the weekend, so I don't have that many items tracked right now, but typically I'll have hundreds of these that are listed down through here as it's pinging the system. It's just a matter of the timing. But that's the idea, is that we'll track those. But that's the bird's eye view that we had so far. So that's, again, calendar board, staff appointments, and then the dashboard. So now we're going to switch over to the service orders and the appointments and show how we actually add content to what shows up in those reports. So we're just going to go into the service orders. And this is just going to be a list of the items that we already have, that we've already scheduled, that have already been, the phone calls we've already received. And this is just the list. And some of the things that's worth noting here is you can see right here, I have a checkbox that is appointments needed. So you may have staged your service orders, but you haven't necessarily created an appointment yet. So it's just giving you that flag, and you can add this to your dashboard as well, letting you know the items that still need to be put on a calendar. If you have items on a purchase order, again, same idea. This is a list of the things where we're waiting for items to be received before we can hit the road, and then other details. But if we drill in and just create a brand new service order, I can show you where those fields are found. And so here we are staging a call in. Somebody called in and said something's broken. And my order type that I have defaulted in here is MRO, which, if you look at how that reads, is maintenance, repair, and operations, or break fix. You can set up as many of these service order types as you like, and they can act accordingly. So if we're doing something like working with our construction module, we can send the billing over to the project instead of billing from the service order. For the type that I'm working with, MRO, I'm billing from the appointment. But you could also have other types. Here's an internal service order where you're just working on things in-house, no reason to do any billing. Or if you need to do quotes, or if you just need to create these just to be able to flag it different from others, and so you can report off of that sales order type, you can certainly do that. All right, so there's my default MRO order type. And let's just say this is for my first customer in the list. All the details about the customer are on that customer record, and it defaults in, like the address. But if I needed to override that address, maybe it was going to be a slightly different location where I'm doing my service work today, I could update that accordingly, or I could use a different location if we have that in the system, like it's going to be on Jersey Street instead of 10th Avenue. Now, after staging this information here, if it is related to a construction project or any other project, I can pull up that project here, which is especially helpful if I'm doing my billing to that project. Then on the details tab, this is where we actually get into the meat and potatoes about what work we're expecting to do. So here, let's just make sure I put in a description. And because I lack imagination, it's something is broken. Down here on the details tab, you can add items from a list, or you can just come in here and start adding items at will. So if we're expecting to go out and put in some hours, we can just use something like as generic as repair, or you can name that whatever you like. Mine is just pretty basic here. And I have a default of 4 hours every time I'm doing any repair work, and I don't need to change that right now with my default price and any other details that I need on this plethora of data. And that is a large number of columns, but just know that you can just click over here on your left-hand side and get rid of the columns that have no meaning to you, or add columns that do. So whittle that down accordingly so you don't have to see all that extra information. But there's the hours that I'm expecting to put into this, and then you can also pull out of your warehouse.
Yeah. Is that
yes,
done?
Sir.
Is that done once, and it's kind of saved as our template, or do you do that every time you open a job? You delete them, or
which part?
The columns that you delete that we don't want. Do we do that on every job, or do we set it as a template?
It's a template. So this screen right here on that service order is personal. So if I make changes to it, it changes it for me. But Patrick can have his own, and Kevin can have his own. So however you define your columns. But if you wanted to, you could you can do it on a mass level too.
We could make it company wide, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of them would be redundant. They look a little more maybe HVAC.
Gotcha.
We don't have equipment and stuff like that. So, but okay. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. Yep. Certainly things to take advantage of. But I'm just going to pull up the very first item in my inventory. You can ignore what it is. It doesn't matter. It's just an item, right? So I'm taking this off the truck or out of the warehouse, wherever it needs to come from. Down here on the bottom, it's letting me know I have 390 on hand. If I keep scrolling over, I'll get to my quantities eventually. There we go. I'm expecting to take one of these off the truck or out of the warehouse. You can see there's the warehouse, but if it is something that resides on my truck, I could just take it out of there instead. So there's my one unit. If it was something that,
Jeff, if they're not using inventory, then they can just have non-stock items that are available for drawdown.
You nailed it. That's right. Yeah.
Populate this grid.
And instead of it being a literal inventory item, it would be a non-stock item. Which also might mean that you need to put in a purchase order for that, and you would mark that for PO, and then you can generate a purchase order directly from this sales order. I'm sorry, service order. So stock or non-stock, do what makes sense. If it doesn't make sense for you to have inventory, that's fine too. But fill up the grid with as much information as you need. Stock items, non-stock items. You could even go as far as including line items for instructions too. So if you needed to give your techs instructions out in the field exactly what to do, whether you put it in the description or you put it in the note up here on the top, or the notes on the line item here, we actually give you a line where you can create just instructions to tell the folks what to do when they're out there. So there's a lot of different ways you can approach this. But I'm going to leave this simple with that repair line. I'm going to save this. When I do save this, there's some information that's flowing over from the customer that I already had staged at Alta Ace. Notice the note field came in over here. So this is one of our first customers. Be nice to them. I also have a file that came over from that customer record. So if I did have some kind of a form that I always wanted to have available on these service orders, I can do that. Okay, all right. So we've staged the service order, and it would sit out there in the list just like the other ones, waiting for an appointment. You can see right there, there's that box, and we saw that in the list just a moment ago. So if I click on the appointments, we'll see we have no appointments yet. And now we're ready to put this on somebody's calendar. So when I click on the Create Appointments button, and something just hung up on me. This is a problem I've been having since I did a restore this weekend, so I apologize. I need to bang some heads of some IT people out there. Let me just go back into that service order. All right, like I said, I have no appointments. Up here on the top, when I click on the create appointment, what's going to happen is it shifts screens on us, and it's taking us from the service order screen to the appointment screen, where all the same information about that service order comes down to the appointments. So it's like the service order is an umbrella for all the appointments that we set up. So it can be a one-to-many relationship, one service order to as many appointments as we need. Over here on my staff tab, this is where I actually assign it to somebody. And so like I said earlier, I'm logged in as Maxwell Baker. So I think I said that earlier. Maybe I didn't. But I am logged in as Maxwell Baker. So I want to make sure and put this on Maxwell Baker's calendar so it shows up on my mobile device. If I click on the add staff button, he's not in the setup because he just doesn't meet the credentials for, here we go. He doesn't have the skills. He doesn't have the license type. So he doesn't show up in this list. But it's, so that's part of the limit, the part of the structure of the system is that you can look for people that meet those criteria, or if you needed to, you could just assign it to Maxwell Baker, which is what I'm doing now. So maybe it was a rush job and we just needed to cut corners or something, and Maxwell Baker ends up being the guy. But you may have noticed I launched my mobile device while I was talking. This is the mobile device. This is the mobile app, and I do have a lot of items turned on that mobile device. More than you probably wouldn't like your text to see, but that's based off of security, and I'm logged in as admin, so I'm seeing a little bit of everything. But right there is where you see my services. But the reason why I brought that up now is that when I click the save button here, Maxwell Baker is going to be notified on his mobile device that he has a new appointment, and that's what that little blue indicator is right there. And you can see that appointment number is 6296-1. If I go back to my browser, you can see it right there, 6296-1. Let me just pull this down a little bit so you can see both things going on while it's happening. So there's my appointment on the browser, and then here's my mobile device. And so when I click on that, all the information that happens there in that browser is happening on the mobile. It's the same database, it's cloud. So if anything happens in one device, it's happening in the cloud, which means it's happening everywhere. And so you see that description right there, something is broken. If I go down to the bottom, there's the note that came over from the service order that came over to the appointment. It's now here on the mobile device. You may take over those notes and have made some other comments that, hey, make sure to go to the door with the yellow door with the 944 is the address, something like that. So whatever details you needed to add, you can do that. If I click over on my details tab, that's where we'll see the same thing there, the repair item, which is what we had on our browser here. Notice that it's not started. Same thing with the overall appointment. It's not started. I have some automated travel turned on for my service orders, my appointments. So when I can say that I'm leaving the building at a particular time, so I can actually track the driver's time as he travels. So I'm leaving here at 10:23 in the morning, starts the clock. And the other thing it does is it marks the item as the status will be started after I arrive. But there we go. There's the labor travel item. And if I come up here on the top and I arrive at the job site, and instead of that being 10:23, let's make that 11:23. So it'll be 1 hour. And click on the end here. And now you see the status is in process. If I come back over to my appointment over here and refresh, in process. So again, data is happening in the cloud. Now notice down here, my labor travel, it's completed, and it now assumes I'm working on that first top line item, which is in process. So if I did have multiple line items, one for repair, one for installation, it would allow me to go from one line to the next, changing the status. So let's drill into that line item. And we said it was going to take 4 hours. Or let's make some notes down here on the bottom. So let's just say, well, hey, I'm using the microphone on my phone. Let's just do that. I went on site and I found the thing that was broken and I fixed it. So it's a phone. Still take advantage of the features that are built directly into the device, whether it's Android or Apple, you're good. Up here on the top, click on the paper clip. Maybe you need to take pictures of what's going on. There's a literal barcode scanner I keep on my desktop in case I need to scan some inventory in and out. And now it's saving that picture up into the cloud. And so like I said, everything is being tracked as we're going along here. I can change the line status to completed. And if I needed to add any other lines, I could do that too. I could come down here to the bottom, click my plus, add new, add items, capture expense receipt. You're capturing that expense receipt. I think I have one here on my desk. If I did go out and had to go and buy something, I can add that line item here as well. And this is part of my broken technology, but ideally what would happen here is it captures data directly off of that receipt. That's what the recognition does. And it would have entered the description and the dollar amount and the expense item for me. But that's part of my update over the weekend that my demo environment still needs a little bit of TLC. But assuming everything's done with the job, now up here in the top right-hand corner, I can hit my actions button. I can complete the job. I can depart, create prepayment. I can preview the report. I preview the report. This is what the customer could see, when I'm done with the job and they need to see, what happened. There's my repair line, my travel line. Let's go over here. Dollar amounts associated with that. Down on the bottom is my total. I must have made that 0 time. All right, spent 0 time on that. Good work, Jeff. That's just a data entry problem. That's not the system. That was me. I just didn't go and update the line. But with all that still being said, now I can have them sign off. And that signature is now being captured and put on that document too. And there you go. There's that my scribble. And if everything looks good, I think I clicked complete. So come back over here to the browser. I guess I did not. Let's go back into it. Service order. And it's 6 or half a dozen, whether I complete it here on the mobile device or back in the browser app. It works the same way. It's just that the mobile app is optimized to show us, to be used on a smartphone. Did I complete that? There we go. There's the complete button. And then all the information about that job is being uploaded and available in the browser. So now when I come back over here, it's showing as completed. Some of this depends on your process. If you want the tech out in the field to do the complete, that's fine. Maybe you want them to come back in here. Somebody in the office actually clicks complete. If I needed to, as the person in the office, I could reopen. There's that reopen right here. Or I can look at those line items and say, well, why didn't you put in some hours, man? You forgot. So that you put in an estimate, but you didn't put in actual. There's actual. So I can just reopen and go in and adjust accordingly. Make sure. Got a lot of columns here. So estimated, unit, price, discount, unit cost. And this must be the way I have this configured. That it's not letting me change this. But you will be able to change it in your system. This is just my setup here that it's not letting me edit that. Might be because I completed that line when I should have changed it before I completed. But with all that being stated, I'm just going to change that back to start and then I can complete again. That's actually it's the start button is what's keeping me from doing the editing. Now that I see that, there we go, and then I can complete. So I'm just not going to spend any more time on that part. But hopefully the idea is there that your people in the office, they get to control this in the end. Up here on the top in the files menu, there's the signed document. Down here on the line item, there's my note that I spoke into the phone. I also have the attached picture associated with the system. If everything looks good and we're ready to go, then I can click quick process up here. I've got a little clock going on here. Again, this has to do with the update I did this weekend, so I apologize. Let me just refresh.
And Jeff, you can create a workflow around this as well. So the technicians, when a work order is complete or whatever it is that you define them as wanting them to do, they can then go through an approval process like off before it's invoiced.
Yeah, you got it. That's right. Yep. Oh, that's the wrong item. It was 6296. Just to show off a little bit of our search capabilities. If I do that 6296 as search over here on the left-hand side, there's that item. So if you do have that information in front of you, you don't have to spend a lot of time searching, just type it in. Now what this quick process button does for us is it can handle a lot of different things all at one time. So it can go ahead and do things like email the attached file to the customer. And then while I'm at it, let's go ahead and release and create it and email the invoice. But like Patrick said, you could stop at that point where the document was being emailed and instead let the AR department handle what goes on over there. Depends on your internal processes on how you want your workflow to work. For me, for the demo purposes, I'm doing all of that at one time, and it does take a couple of extra resources to do that. When this finishes up here on that activity link right here, you'll see the email that went out. And so we're actually tracking all the activity we've had around appointments and service orders too, so that your customer ever says, I never received that document, you could just come back into that service order or appointment and be like, well, we show right here that it went out on October 13th, and it was emailed to whoever the default is. And then up here is my attachment, and this will be that signed document that I took from my mobile device. All the way down to the signature. And then over on the AR side, that's my billing documents link here. You can see the same thing on that AR side, that the invoice was automatically mailed. Now, like I said before, I chose MRO as my appointment or service order type. So I'm doing the billing from that appointment. But if you chose something like the PBC, then the billing would be sent over to the project, and then you do your billing from the project. But here's the AR invoice that was created. And then ultimately your GL was updated to with a batch that updates your revenue and your accounts receivable. With my $2. Very successful trip. I just need to fix that item right there in the system. So let me go ahead and pause right here and see what you questions, comments about that flow.
Just wondering, when the service techs are like tracking the hours and what, does that flow into like timesheets too, so we're not like duplicating entry anywhere?
It sure does, yeah. So that labor travel right here, I'm confident in that line working. So it's we did the 1 hour, right? 1 hour duration.
Yeah.
And we have that linked over to my time and expense module right here. And it came into that time and expense as an activity. And so we'll probably see the 2 minutes for the the top item and then 1 hour for the other item that's in here. So let me, yeah, it's looking at the wrong time frame. No, it's the right time frame. So yeah, there we go. See the labor travel right here, 1 hour spent. So that came over from the field services module. Then that time is what feeds the time clock or the time card. So when the employees have their, need to fill in the gaps of their time card, that everything that came over from the field services module will already be here. All they have to do is just fill in the gaps for the other 8 hours.
Awesome.
So yeah, any time that's entered into a work order flows through as an activity into the time capture for all time. So if you have technicians who work on projects and work orders, all of their time will be centralized back in the time and expense management. Further, might be not a bad segue, Jeff, just to cue you. So if I'm an employee and I'm out working on a particular job, I can also enter time to that job and against a cost code, and then take that time through an approval process.
Yeah.
And that would be in the mobile. Could you bring that up in the mobile interface just for so they could see that? I wasn't able to show it in my previous demo the other day.
Right on. So there's my link for time and expense and the employee time card.
So this employee or crew, right? So if you got a foreman on who wants to enter time for a group of employees, they can do that as well.
You got it. So there's my time card. This is a couple of weeks ago, October 22nd, but got the summary section right there where I can see everything that's happened during that whole week, and I have no data in here right now, but the details is where I would go. Okay, so on Monday, for regular hours, I worked on a particular project. You look at the list of projects. I worked on that hotel, a particular task from that hotel, masonry. How much time did I spend? 4 hours. Any information? Is it billable or not? Any other information we have to apply? So for each line item, you enter that. I used a bad project. If I go back to that, that was 2006. That's this one. If I refresh, there's what I just entered in the mobile app. So it shows up as summarized for every day of the for every daylet right here, or you can go into a detailed view as well and see each individual line. And like Patrick said, there's also the weekly crew time entry too, where you can enter all the time for your crew.
Awesome.
And then all that time that's been captured can be taken through an approval process, right?
And that's a workflow we can set up, is what you've been saying.
Yep.
Right?
A workflow to approve that time prior to it being processed as payroll.
That's right.
There seems to be like workflows we can set up on lots of different things. So automatic, like anything that we set up for approval will automatically go through the workflow order that we set up. Is it pretty easy to create these types of workflows?
I mean, I personally think it's pretty easy. Like here's one that we set up that's kind of advanced for AP bills. And it has multiple levels, but nothing about any one line is difficult. So here's an example that when we have something that says AP transactions that use a sub account equal to this value, it needs to be routed to this person for approval. Or down here is another one that is anytime a transaction comes in for a vendor equal to this value, it needs to go to Anna for approval.
So you can have multiple levels of approval as well, right? So we could go to a project manager before, if it's an expense over $50 or $5,000 or $10,000, it could go to Kevin, right? After the project manager approves it.
Does it, can it even be like a PO on a specific jobs? It knows which that PM is.
Sure,
So it
will.
filters.
So it can be role-based, right? So
Yeah.
if your approval process is role-based, then that PO is issued to a job. On the job record, we identify who the project manager is. So if it's a role-based rule, then it'll route through to that role on that project, automatically filtering so that project manager only sees the POs that are awaiting their approval.
Yeah. Awesome.
We didn't, I guess when you were over, you spoke briefly, Jeff, like, so do you guys have a need, do you issue POs to work orders? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So the technician can do that out in the field with as much or as little information as they have, right? It might just be the vendor and then get assigned a PO number. So when that invoice comes in, we have some record of who ordered what to what work order. Or if they know what they're purchasing, then they can put in more detail on that purchase order. So when that AP invoice comes in, they can reconcile back against what was purchased. So that all becomes a part of the work order, the appointment record and the work order record. So it's there for that triple match should you choose. Do you guys ever are your guys out in the field and they're sort of in doing one thing and then they get asked to look at this and they need to put maybe a quote together?
Not often the quote side, but some of them, sure.
Right, so they could initiate a quote and then that quote could go back with whatever information, photos, whatever they talk into the mobile device, could go back to the service manager who then reviews it, prices it, and sends that quote back to the customer. If that quote is accepted, we can then flip that quote into a work order. And a history of that quote will roll to that work order and also roll to the customer in the location. So quite a bit of flexibility there. When the technician is out in the field and we've been using the system for some time, they'll have a complete history of every work order that was completed on site.
Yeah.
By location, right? So they can see the last guy that was in and what was done, and that kind of thing is all available at their fingertips in the mobile device. Any additional questions or do we want to take through and approve that work order maybe, Jeff, and flip it into an invoice?
That'd be good.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Hold on. You said flip the service order into an invoice?
Yeah, let's close it out and bill it. Can we see what that does?
Oh, I already did, but we can do
that
a new
was
one.
the invoice as well that we would send to the client, the full thing.
Yeah, so the way the billing that I had set for that appointment, that 6296, when I clicked on that quick process button, one of the options I had was go ahead and invoice. And so it did that already, and it shows up here in my billing documents tab with a link to that AR invoice.
Okay.
But it would make sense to go ahead and do it again so you can see it probably slower, so I can make sure to detail that out. But there was that invoice.
And show us what the invoice looks like.
Yeah, that's gonna say maybe just show us the invoice would be important. Like we'll figure out.
Okay, so yeah, here's the AR invoice. So this switched over to the AR module, and all the details from that service order and appointment came over to the AR module here as their individual line items. So there was the repair, there's the travel that we did. Notice that it's open. That means that it's already pretty much been released because I told it to do that in my quick process. Then up here in my activities tab, here's the email that went out to the customer. And then there's the details of the email that's from my template. And you can control the text, what shows up in that template. And then in the file attachment for that SO invoice from the sales service order. And here's what that looked like. So with that repair line, the labor line, your logo would appear here. And all the way down
But
on the bottom.
This is just a report, so it can look exactly like your invoices look today if you choose.
Okay, we can modify it to how we want.
Oh, yeah, sure. It's just a report, right? You tell us where your fields are, as a part of the implementation process, you're going to show us your invoice formats and you're going to say, we really want to stick with these. So those become the output.
And does that go for both projects and service?
Absolutely. No limit to the number of invoice formats you can have. So when you set up a project, you define the billing relationship and then you pick the invoice format that you want to use for that job. So if you have a customer that likes to see it in a particular way, then you can do that when setting up the job. And you might have a different format for your progress type. You might have a different type for your time and material. Again, just reports to us.